Dawn broke over the plains beside the Hydaspes River. Rain clouds still hung across the sky. The ground remained soft from the night's storm. On one side stood Alexander and his Macedonian army, veterans who had marched from Greece to the edge of India. On the other, King Porus waited with the strongest army Alexander had faced since entering the subcontinent. At the front of the Indian line stood the war elephants, towering above the soldiers around them. Their bodies were protected with armor. Each carried skilled warriors armed with bows and spears. For many Macedonian horses, the sight alone was enough to cause panic. Alexander had never fought against such a force before. He understood that charging directly into the elephants would be disastrous. As always, he relied on strategy instead of reckless courage. The battle opened with cavalry maneuvers. Alexander led his companion cavalry toward one side of the Indian army. Porus responded by sending cavalry to block the attack. At exactly the right moment, Alexander changed direction. Additional Macedonian cavalry struck from another angle. The Indian horsemen found themselves fighting on multiple fronts. The battlefield quickly descended into chaos. While the cavalry fought, the Macedonian phalanx advanced toward the elephants. The enormous animals charged forward. The earth trembled beneath their feet. Some horses refused to move. Others turned away in fear. The first collision was devastating. Several Macedonian soldiers were crushed beneath the elephants. Long tusks threw men into the air. Powerful trunks lifted warriors from the ground. The carefully ordered ranks of the phalanx began to break apart for a brief moment. It seemed the Indian army might achieve victory. Alexander's commanders quickly adapted. Rather than attacking the elephants head-on, they targeted the animals' drivers and the soldiers riding on their backs. Archers concentrated their fire. Javelins struck the elephants from every direction, wounded and terrified. Many of the animals became uncontrollable. Instead of crushing only Macedonian soldiers, some turned back into the Indian lines. Confusion spread through Porus's own army. The elephants trampled friend and foe alike. Seeing the opportunity, Alexander ordered a general advance. The Macedonian phalanx pushed forward with relentless discipline. Cavalry attacked from both flanks. The Indian formation slowly began to collapse. Even then, Porus refused to retreat, mounted upon a massive elephant. He continued directing the battle. His soldiers watched their king fighting at the front, not hiding behind his army, not fleeing from danger again and again. He encouraged his warriors to continue resisting. Alexander noticed the courage of his opponent. Unlike Darius, Porus never abandoned the battlefield, even after suffering wounds. He remained on his elephant, still fighting, still refusing to surrender. Hours passed. The battlefield became covered with mud, broken weapons, and fallen soldiers. Eventually, Porus's army could fight no longer, surrounded and exhausted. The surviving warriors laid down their arms. Porus himself had been wounded several times. His elephant, still loyal to its master, remained beside him until the battle ended. The great king was finally captured. Alexander ordered that Porus be brought before him. Ancient historians preserve the remarkable conversation that followed. Alexander asked a simple question. "Do you wish to be treated?" Porus answered without hesitation. "Treat me like a king." Alexander smiled. "And for anything else," Porus replied, "everything is contained in that." Whether those exact words were spoken can never be proven, but every major ancient source agrees on the spirit of the exchange. Alexander deeply admired Porus's dignity. Instead of humiliating his defeated enemy, he made an extraordinary decision. Porus would remain king. Not only would he keep his kingdom, Alexander granted him even more territory to govern. It was another example of Alexander's belief that respected enemies could become valuable allies. The decision strengthened Macedonian control over northwestern India. Porus became one of Alexander's most loyal regional rulers. The victory at the Hydaspes became one of Alexander's greatest military achievements. Unlike previous battles, he had defeated an experienced army using completely unfamiliar weapons. His reputation grew even greater. Yet the victory came with a painful loss. During the campaign, Alexander's beloved horse Bucephalus died. For nearly 20 years, horse and rider had fought together from the plains of Greece to the mountains of Persia. crossed deserts, rivers, and countless battlefields. Bucephalus had carried Alexander through almost every major victory of his life. Ancient writers disagree about the exact cause of his death. Some believed he died from wounds received during the battle. Others thought old age finally claimed him. Whatever the reason, Alexander mourned deeply. To honor his lifelong companion, he founded a new city near the battlefield. He named it Bucephalus. The city preserved the memory of the horse that had carried one of history's greatest conquerors across much of the known world. After the victory, Alexander wanted to continue east. Local rulers spoke of even greater kingdoms beyond the next rivers. They described vast armies, immense cities, and lands stretching farther than anyone in the Macedonian army could imagine. Alexander's ambition remained unchanged. He wanted to reach the end of the known world. His soldiers felt differently for nearly 8 years. They had marched almost without pause. They had crossed mountains higher than any in Greece, endured burning deserts, survived countless battles. Many had not seen their families since leaving Macedonia. Thousands of kilometers separated them from home. Now, ahead lay even larger rivers, unknown kingdoms, and reports of armies far greater than any they had yet defeated. When the army reached the Hyphasis River, modern-day Bucephalus River, the soldiers finally reached their limit. For the first time in his career, Alexander gave an order, and his army refused to obey. The man who had never lost a battle was about to face a challenge that no military genius could overcome: the determination of his own exhausted soldiers. The Macedonian army stood on the banks of the Hyphasis River. Beyond the water, unknown kingdoms stretched farther into India. Travelers spoke of the powerful Nanda Empire. Its rulers were said to command enormous armies, thousands of cavalry, tens of thousands of infantry, and hundreds, perhaps even thousands, of war elephants. Ancient reports almost certainly exaggerated the numbers, but one fact remained clear. The campaigns ahead would be harder than anything the Macedonians had yet experienced. Alexander looked across the river with the same determination that had carried him from Macedonia to India. He wanted to continue. To him, there was always another horizon to reach, another kingdom to conquer, another chapter to write in history. His soldiers saw something different. They saw another endless campaign, another unknown land, another enemy. Most had been marching for nearly 8 years. Many carried scars from dozens of battles. Friends they had grown up with had fallen in Persia, in Central Asia, along the Hydaspes River. Some had not embraced their families since leaving home as young men. They had followed Alexander farther than anyone had ever imagined. Now, they wanted only one thing: to return home. Alexander gathered the army, standing before thousands of exhausted veterans. He delivered one of the greatest speeches of his life. Ancient historians preserved different versions of his words, though the exact speech has been lost. Its message remains clear. He reminded the soldiers of everything they had achieved together. They had defeated the Persian Empire, captured Babylon, Susa, Persepolis, crossed deserts and mountains, reached lands no Greek army had ever seen. He promised that one final campaign would complete their destiny. Then, together, they would return home as the greatest conquerors in history. When he finished, silence filled the camp. No cheers followed. No soldiers stepped forward for the first time. Alexander's army remained completely still. Finally, one of his most respected officers broke the silence. Porus, a veteran commander who had served beside Alexander for years with great respect. He spoke honestly. The soldiers still loved their king. They remained loyal, but they were exhausted. Many wished to see their parents before they died. Others hoped to meet children born during the long years of war. They had given everything now. They asked only to go home. The speech deeply affected Alexander, yet he refused to accept defeat. For 3 days, he remained inside his tent. Ancient writers describe him waiting, hoping the soldiers would change their minds. No one came, no one asked to continue. The answer remained unchanged. At last, Alexander accepted reality. Even the greatest commander in history could not conquer the world without an army willing to follow him. He emerged from his tent. The campaign eastward was over. Before leaving, Alexander ordered 12 enormous stone altars to be built beside the river. They served as monuments marking the easternmost point reached by his army centuries later. Ancient writers still describe these monuments with admiration. The long journey home began, but Alexander refused simply to retrace his old route. Instead, he planned another extraordinary expedition. Part of the army would travel by land. Another part would sail down the Indus River toward the ocean. To accomplish this, hundreds of ships were constructed under the command of the experienced Admiral Nearchus. The new fleet prepared for one of history's greatest river voyages. Alexander himself accompanied much of the expedition. As the fleet moved south, several tribes resisted. Among them, the Malians proved especially dangerous. During one fierce siege, Alexander once again demonstrated the boldness that had made him famous. Perhaps too much boldness, growing impatient with the slow progress, he climbed a scaling ladder himself. A handful of soldiers followed before most of the army could reach the walls. The ladders broke. Alexander suddenly found himself inside the enemy fortress, almost alone, surrounded by hostile warriors. The fighting became desperate. Then, disaster struck. An arrow pierced Alexander's chest. Ancient sources describe it passing through his armor and deep into his lung. Blood poured from the wound. The king collapsed. Outside the walls, the Macedonian army believed Alexander had been killed. Fury swept through the ranks. Soldiers smashed through the gates with overwhelming force. The defenders were quickly overwhelmed. Inside, Alexander was barely alive. His physicians worked frantically. Removing the arrow proved extremely dangerous, according to ancient writers. Blood flowed heavily as the weapon was extracted. For days, his condition remained uncertain. Rumors spread throughout the army that the king had died. Fear gripped the camp. Everything they had built depended upon one man. Eventually, Alexander recovered enough to appear before his soldiers. Ancient accounts describe wounded men weeping with relief when they saw him alive. The sight restored morale across the army, yet the near-fatal injury revealed an uncomfortable truth. Alexander was not invincible. Even the greatest conqueror in history could fall to a single arrow. The campaign continued south until the Macedonians finally reached the Indian Ocean. For the first time, Alexander stood at the edge of a vast sea unlike any he had known. Offerings were made to the gods. The moment symbolized another extraordinary achievement. His army had marched from Europe to the ocean at the edge of the known world. Many believed the hardest part of the journey had ended. They were wrong. Alexander chose to return through one of the harshest landscapes on Earth, the Gedrosian Desert, modern-day Makran. Ancient travelers feared it. Local guides warned against it. Water was scarce. The heat was relentless. Entire caravans had disappeared there. Alexander ignored every warning. He believed his army could accomplish what no other army had achieved. The decision would become one of the greatest mistakes of his entire career. Before the journey ended, the desert would claim more lives than many of his greatest battles combined. The Macedonian army entered the Gedrosian Desert with confidence. They had defeated the Persian Empire, crossed the Hindu Kush, survived India surely. One more journey could not stop them. The land ahead looked endless. Golden sand stretched to every horizon. There were few rivers, few villages, almost no shade. Even experienced local guides warned that the route was deadly. Alexander pressed forward anyway. Historians still debate why he chose this path. Some believe he wanted to prove that his army could accomplish what earlier Persian kings had failed to achieve. Others argue he hoped to support the naval expedition led by Nearchus along the coast. Perhaps both reasons influenced his decision. Whatever the motive, the consequences proved devastating. Within days, the desert revealed its true nature. The sun burned relentlessly overhead. Water became more valuable than gold. Soldiers marched with cracked lips, dry throats, and blistered feet. Pack animals collapsed beneath heavy loads. Many never rose again. Food quickly became scarce. Supply wagons struggled across loose sand. The few wells they discovered often contained only muddy water sometimes. Entire groups marched for hours believing water lay just ahead, only to discover another stretch of empty desert. Exhaustion spread throughout the army. Ancient writers describe men collapsing where they stood, unable to continue. The march became a battle for survival, not against enemy soldiers. But against nature itself then, disaster struck one night. Heavy rain fell unexpectedly in the distant hills. The soldiers welcomed the cool air. They believed the storm had passed safely away. They were mistaken. Without warning, a massive flash flood rushed through the dry riverbed where part of the camp had been established. Water crashed through the valley with terrifying force. Tents disappeared instantly. Pack animals were swept away. Weapons, food, and supplies vanished into the darkness. Many soldiers drowned before they even understood what was happening. Those who survived could only watch helplessly as months of precious provisions disappeared downstream. The army continued marching, now weaker than ever. Ancient historians disagree about the number of lives lost during the desert crossing. Some suggest tens of thousands perished. Modern historians believe the figures may be exaggerated. Even so, there is little doubt the Gedrosian Desert became one of the deadliest episodes of Alexander's entire campaign. It claimed more lives than several major battles combined. Throughout the ordeal, Alexander refused to separate himself from his soldiers. One famous story has survived for centuries. A small group of scouts finally discovered a little water, barely enough to fill a single helmet. They hurried back and offered it to their king. Alexander looked around. Thousands of exhausted soldiers watched silently. Instead of drinking, he poured the precious water onto the ground. If his men could not drink, neither would he. Whether every detail happened exactly as later writers described remains uncertain. But the story reflects the image Alexander worked hard to maintain. A king who shared every hardship with his army. The gesture lifted morale, even though it did nothing to ease their thirst. Weeks later, the survivors finally emerged from the desert, thin, exhausted, and deeply scarred by the experience. Alexander openly acknowledged the terrible losses. The victory over nature had come at an unbearable cost. Soon afterward, the army reunited with Nearchus and the fleet. Against incredible odds, the naval expedition had also survived. The reunion became a moment of celebration. For the first time in months, the Macedonians could rest. But Alexander's ambitions had not faded. Returning to Persia, he immediately began reorganizing his empire. The territory stretching from Greece to India could no longer be ruled as a collection of conquered lands. Alexander envisioned something entirely different, a single empire, where Macedonians and Persians served together. He encouraged cooperation between different cultures. Persian nobles received important government positions. Young Persian soldiers were trained in the Macedonian style of warfare. Greek administrators worked alongside local officials. Many Macedonian veterans disliked these policies. They believed they had conquered Persia, not become part of it. Alexander ignored their complaints. He believed unity offered greater strength than division. In 324 BC, he organized one of the most extraordinary ceremonies of his reign. At the city of Susa, a massive royal wedding took place. Alexander himself married Statira, a daughter of the late Darius III. He also married Parysatis, another Persian princess from the royal family. Around 80 of his senior officers married Persian noblewomen during the same celebration. Thousands of ordinary soldiers received gifts for marrying local women. Alexander hoped these marriages would unite the peoples of his empire through family ties. Many Macedonians accepted reluctantly. Others quietly resented the policy. The divisions inside the army continued growing. Not long afterward, the tension exploded. At a place called Opis, Alexander announced that older Macedonian veterans would be allowed to return home with honor. Instead of celebrating, many soldiers became furious. Rumors spread that Persian troops would replace them. Some believed Alexander now favored Persians over the men who had conquered the empire beside him. Voices rose in protest. For the first time, large numbers of Macedonian soldiers openly challenged their king. Alexander reacted with anger. He arrested several leaders of the mutiny. According to ancient sources, some were executed immediately. Then, he delivered a powerful speech. He reminded the soldiers of everything they had accomplished together, how they had begun with almost nothing, how they had conquered the greatest empire in the world, how every victory had been shared. Gradually, the soldiers realized how far the conflict had gone. Many approached Alexander in tears, begging forgiveness. The reconciliation restored unity, but another tragedy soon struck. One far more personal than any mutiny, Alexander's closest friend, Hyphasis, fell seriously ill. The man who had shared his education, his campaigns, and nearly every triumph since childhood, was dying. Nothing Alexander had conquered could save the friend he loved most. The loss would change him forever, and perhaps it would also mark the beginning of the final chapter of his own extraordinary life. Hyphasis had been more than a general. He had been Alexander's closest companion since childhood. Together, they had studied under Aristotle, trained in Macedonia, crossed into Asia, fought beside one another in nearly every major battle for years. Hyphasis remained one of the few men Alexander trusted completely. In the autumn of 324 BC, while the army was staying in the city of Ecbatana, Hyphasis suddenly became ill. Ancient historians disagree about the exact cause. Some believed it was a fever. Others suggested typhoid or another infectious disease. One account claims he ignored his physician's instructions and ate heavy food while recovering. Whatever the illness, his condition rapidly worsened. Alexander remained at his friend's side, the greatest conqueror in history, who had faced countless battles without fear, could do nothing against disease. A few days later, Hyphasis died. Alexander was devastated. Ancient writers describe him collapsing in grief. For days, he reportedly refused food, refused conversation, and remained beside his friend's body. His sorrow shocked the entire empire. Alexander ordered a period of official mourning. Music stopped throughout the camp. The manes and tails of horses were cut. Military celebrations were canceled. Some ancient sources even claim he ordered the execution of Hyphasis's physician. Historians continue debating whether that story is accurate. But there is no doubt that Alexander's grief was genuine. He wanted his closest companion honored as few men ever had been. Messengers were sent across the empire. Plans began for an enormous funeral in Babylon. Ancient accounts describe extraordinary sums of money being spent on the ceremony. The funeral monument reportedly reached astonishing heights. Whether every description is accurate remains uncertain. But historians agree it became one of the grandest funerals of the ancient world. Many of Alexander's companions noticed a change in him after Hyphasis's death. He became quieter, more withdrawn, yet his ambition remained. He immediately began planning new campaigns. Arabia became his next objective. Its coastlines remained largely unexplored by the Greeks. Its trade routes promised enormous wealth. Alexander ordered new ships to be constructed. Engineers surveyed harbors. Explorers gathered information about distant lands, even after more than a decade of constant conquest. He was preparing another expedition. In early 323 BC, Alexander returned to Babylon. The ancient city welcomed him once again. Its massive walls, magnificent temples, and fertile countryside made it an ideal center for his vast empire. Delegations arrived from every direction. Greek cities, Persian nobles, Indian rulers, foreign ambassadors. All sought audiences with the king whose empire stretched farther than any before it. Babylon buzzed with activity. Military officers discussed future campaigns. Engineers prepared maps, shipbuilders worked along the river. Everything suggested Alexander's greatest ambition still lay ahead. Then, without warning, he became ill. Ancient historians provide different descriptions of what followed. Most agree the illness began after a banquet. Alexander developed a fever at first. No one seemed especially concerned. He had recovered from serious illness before. The fever continued day after day. His condition worsened despite growing weakness. Alexander reportedly continued discussing military plans with his generals. Eventually, he became too weak to leave his bed outside the royal palace. Anxious soldiers gathered, rumors spread rapidly. Could the man who had survived countless battles truly be dying? One by one, his commanders entered the room. Ancient writers describe Alexander as no longer able to speak clearly. Some accounts say he could only nod in recognition. Others report that he silently greeted each soldier as they passed beside his bed. The atmosphere inside the palace grew heavier with every passing hour. Then came one of history's greatest mysteries. What caused Alexander's death? Ancient sources blamed fever. Modern historians have proposed many possibilities: malaria, typhoid fever, pneumonia, West Nile virus. Complications from old battle wounds. Some later legends even claimed poison. Most historians reject the poisoning theory. There is little reliable evidence supporting it. More likely, disease claimed the life of a man whose body had endured years of relentless warfare. On the 10th or 11th of June 323 BC, depending on the ancient calendar used, Alexander died in Babylon. He was only 32 years old. The news stunned the empire. The man who had never lost a battle, who had conquered lands from Greece to India, was gone. Yet one question remained unanswered: who would inherit the greatest empire on earth? Ancient historians preserve a famous story. As Alexander lay dying, someone reportedly asked, "To whom do you leave your empire?" According to one tradition, he whispered, "To the strongest." Other ancient writers record different answers. Some suggest he handed his royal signet ring to his trusted general Perdiccas. Historians continue debating which account is correct. What is certain is that Alexander left no clear adult heir. His wife Roxana was pregnant. Their son had not yet been born. His half-brother Hydaspes survived, but he suffered from significant disabilities and could not rule effectively alone. The uncertainty created a dangerous power vacuum. The commanders who had conquered the world together now faced an impossible question: who would rule it within days? Arguments filled the royal palace. Generals who had once fought side by side began competing for influence. Temporary compromises were reached. Philip III or Hydaspes and the unborn child of Roxana would be recognized as kings, but real authority rested with the generals. It was only a temporary solution. Beneath the surface, a struggle for power had already begun. The empire Alexander created would never again be ruled by a single man. Instead, it would fracture into rival kingdoms. Its greatest battles were no longer against foreign enemies. They would now be fought between Alexander's own successors. Yet despite the coming wars, his dream refused to die. The empire would divide, but the world he created would continue shaping history for centuries. His final conquest was no longer measured by territory alone. It would be measured by the civilization he left behind. Alexander the Great was gone, the conqueror who had marched from Macedonia to India, who had defeated the greatest empire on earth, who had never lost a battle, had died at only 32 years of age. But his death did not bring peace. It created uncertainty. The greatest empire the world had ever seen suddenly stood without a clear ruler. Inside Babylon, Alexander's generals gathered. Each had fought beside him for years. Each had commanded armies. Each believed he understood Alexander's vision, but none possessed Alexander's authority. Temporary agreements were reached. His half-brother, Philip III or Hydaspes, was declared king. So too was Alexander's unborn son, Alexander IV, who would later be born to Roxana. Yet everyone understood the truth. The kings ruled in name. Real power rested with the generals. At first, they promised cooperation. They divided responsibilities across the empire. Each governor would administer his own province while preserving the unity Alexander had created. The arrangement did not last. Ambition soon replaced loyalty. One by one, the generals began fighting for control. History remembers these conflicts as the Wars of the Diadochi, the Wars of the Successors. Former allies became bitter enemies. Great armies that had once marched together now faced each other across the battlefield. For decades, the empire was consumed by civil war. No single ruler ever succeeded in reuniting it. Instead, Alexander's empire gradually separated into powerful kingdoms. In Egypt, Ptolemy established his own dynasty, the Ptolemaic kingdom. Rather than claiming distant lands, he focused on strengthening Egypt. Its capital, Alexandria, soon became one of the greatest cities in the ancient world. In Asia, Seleucus gained control over enormous eastern territories, creating the Seleucid Empire, stretching from Syria toward Persia. His kingdom preserved much of Alexander's influence across the east. Meanwhile, Antigonus and his descendants ruled large parts of Macedonia and Greece. The Antigonid kingdom carried Macedonian traditions into a new age. Although Alexander's empire had divided, his influence remained everywhere. One tragedy still awaited his own family. Roxana gave birth to Alexander's only legitimate son. Alexander Ivmeni hoped the child would one day restore the empire. Instead, he became a threat to ambitious rulers. Around 309 BC, Roxana and her young son were secretly murdered, ending the direct bloodline of Alexander the Great. The dynasty he founded disappeared, but something even greater survived: the world Alexander had created. Historians call it the Hellenistic Age. For nearly 3 centuries, Greek culture spread across vast regions of Europe, North Africa, and Asia. Cities founded by Alexander became centers of trade, learning, and government. Greek became the international language of diplomacy, commerce, and scholarship. Merchants traveled more freely between distant civilizations. Ideas crossed borders more easily than ever before. In Egypt, Alexandria flourished. Its famous library became one of the greatest collections of knowledge in history. Scholars gathered from across the known world, studying mathematics, astronomy, medicine, philosophy, engineering, and geography. Thinkers such as Euclid advanced mathematics. Eratosthenes calculated the circumference of the earth with astonishing accuracy. Doctors, scientists, and philosophers built upon knowledge gathered from Greece, Egypt, Persia, and beyond. Alexander had not created these discoveries himself, but the empire he built allowed ideas from different civilizations to meet and grow together. Trade expanded dramatically. Goods traveled farther than ever before: silk from Asia, spices from India, gold from Africa, glass from the Mediterranean. Cultures that had once remained separated now influenced one another every day. Alexander's military legacy proved equally remarkable. His use of combined arms warfare, the coordination of infantry, cavalry, engineers, and siege equipment, changed military strategy forever. His speed, flexibility, and willingness to adapt became models studied for centuries. Many of history's greatest commanders admired him. Julius Caesar reportedly stood before a statue of Alexander and reflected on how little he himself had achieved at the same age. Napoleon Bonaparte carefully studied Alexander's campaigns. Military academies around the world still analyze battles such as Granicus, Issus, Gaugamela, and the Hydaspes. His victories remain examples of leadership, planning, and battlefield innovation. Yet Alexander's legacy is not without controversy. His campaigns brought extraordinary achievements, but they also brought extraordinary destruction. Entire cities were destroyed. Thousands of soldiers and civilians lost their lives. Ancient kingdoms disappeared forever to some. Alexander was a visionary who connected civilizations and transformed the ancient world to others. He was an ambitious conqueror whose endless wars caused immense suffering. Both perspectives contain truth. History is rarely simple. Greatness often carries both triumph and tragedy. More than 2,000 years have passed since Alexander's death, yet his name remains known across the world. Books continue to explore his life, films, documentaries, and historical research continue searching for new answers about the man behind the legend. His battles are still taught. His leadership is still debated. His ambition still fascinates people across every generation. The young prince who once dreamed while reading stories of Achilles, the student who learned beneath Aristotle, the king who crossed the Hellespont with fewer than 50,000 men, defeated the greatest empire on earth, reached the edge of the known world, and changed history forever. He died before reaching his 33rd birthday, yet in those brief years, he accomplished more than many rulers achieve in a lifetime. Empires rose, empires fell, kingdoms disappeared, but the story of Alexander endured, not because he conquered the most land, but because he transformed the ancient world in ways that continued long after his own life had ended. From the mountains of Macedonia to the deserts of Egypt, the plains of Persia, and the rivers of India, his footsteps echoed across continents. His dream outlived his empire, his name outlived his dynasty, and even today, centuries after his final journey, the legend of Alexander the Great continues to inspire, challenge, and captivate the imagination of the world.